Looks like someone's ghosts of tricks past have come back to haunt this Halloween. XOXO, Gossip Girl.
Hi guys, it's
Lauren Daisy.
Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to spooky week, spooky season, whatever I've called this, I can't remember now. And today we're going to be looking into one of my favorite deaths in television history because it's so ridiculous, and for that it just wins. It wins everything, every drama award, GCSE, it gets it. So today we're going to be talking about the death of Bart Bass, and more accurately how Bart Bass died twice within the 6 seasons of Gossip Girl. And I wanted to make this video partially because this death is so ridiculous and also so dramatic. I just love it. But also because I feel like the storyline can be a little bit convoluted. I feel like until I'd watched it maybe like 2 or 3 times, I don't think I really understood like what happened and the motives and exactly what went down there, especially when you include Diana and all that stuff. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to go through exactly what happened, the first death leading up to the second and final death of Bart Bass, and kind of everything that went into it and how it actually worked. So as a little bit of an intro, Bartholomew Bass is obviously the father of Chuck Bass, and he is a billionaire. He made his money through real estate and running Bass Industries. So he is introduced to us in season 1 in the second episode, The Wild Brunch, when it's revealed that he is having a secret relationship with Lily Vanderwoodson, Serena's mum. And Dan overhears this, and it is also well established in this early season that Chuck and Bart have a very strained relationship. There's not a lot of love there or care. It's very business, it's very transactional. And in turn, he also has a brother, Jack Bass, who we don't meet until after his death, but he is quite a bit younger than him, and he also has a strained relationship with Bart. So Bart then goes on to marry Lily in the series 1 finale, Much Ado About Nothing, and this is kind of after subtly convincing her that she needs to let Rufus Humphrey, Dan's dad, go, because her and Rufus had a very intense love back when they were younger, when Rufus was in his, rock star days, and Lily was actually like a photographer or something, or like a budding photographer, and she had kind of followed him around, and they had dated. And she was both of them were still kind of, holding a bit of a candle for one another. And they actually end up sleeping together before the wedding, and it seems like maybe Lily is going to choose Rufus, and Bart basically hints to her that he knows about Rufus and that she just needs to let it go and move forward with him, and she agrees to do this, and they get married. Also in this series finale, we see him discouraging Chuck from entering into a relationship with Blair. He's ready to kind of go away with her for the summer and commit to her, and Bart gets in his ear about how, responsibility and just that it's basically going to ruin his life is the gist, and he doesn't end up going. And this kind of sets the tone for Bart across the whole series, really, that he, believes that Chuck's love for Blair is his biggest weakness, and that it kind of hinders him from succeeding within Bass Industries and all of the kind of business side. So it's very clear that not only does Bart not really care for Chuck in an emotional sense, but it's all very much focused around money and the business side of things whenever they do actually interact. And we also saw in this season how critical Bart is of Chuck in the business sense as well. I mean, this man cannot catch a break from this guy. And he pitches this, club, the Victrola, to him, and he thinks it's a really good idea. But then Bart kind of, shoots him down, and they just have this whole conflict, and, it kind of... it sets the tone for what we are about to see. So then moving into season 2, we have a rift between Bart and Lily when Lily finds this kind of dossier that Bart has on her using his private detective, private investigator? Yeah, whatever. had basically gone and found out every single thing there is about Lily. There's like love letters that she'd written to her college boyfriend. There's just everything under the sun in this folder. And initially she is angry about this, and he says that it's purely, you know, just for protection and to make sure that there's nothing that anyone else can use against them, because obviously Bart's quite a powerful man and he has a lot of enemies. So she says it's kind of, you know, whatever, and she lets it go. This is until the Thanksgiving episode, The Magnificent Archibalds, when they find in the safe that Bart also has folders for Serena and Eric. And this is kind of the final straw for Lily. She's like, you know, it was one thing for me, but to have all this information on my kids is just too far. And she then leaves, and it's kind of up in the air as to whether she's going to take him back. So then in the next episode, Bart is asking Lily for a second chance, but she is already planning on leaving Bart to be with Rufus. And this all kind of comes to a head at the snowflake ball, right? Because Lily's there and Rufus, I think, is also there, and they had kind of decided that they were going to be together. And then Chuck sees this and sees what's happening, and he calls Bart to let him know that this is going to go down. So then Bart decides he's going to come to the snowflake ball and he's going to like fight for Lily, he's going to confront her, whatever. And then when he hangs up the phone from Chuck, we see that he's in the limo and he's with, like I said, his PI, Andrew Tyler. And Andrew says that he's found what Bart was looking for about Lily. So we know that she's kind of got this big secret, and Bart has discovered what it is. But before Bart can arrive at the snowflake ball, his car crashes, killing him. But Andrew survives, or he gets out of the car, I think, just before it crashes. So Andrew lives and Bart dies.
Where's Charles? I don't know. I need to find him. Mom, what's wrong? Bart's been in an accident.
So following Bart's death, we hear a voicemail that he left for Lily when he was in the car, stating that he knows why she was in the hospital in France when she was younger. And obviously later we find out that this was because she was having her and Rufus his baby that she then put up for adoption. So that was kind of the big piece of information that Bart had discovered before he died. Then when Bart's will is read, we see that he leaves 29% of Bass Industries to the board, 20% is then left to Lily, and the majority share, 51%, is left to Chuck. So this is the letter that Bart writes for Chuck. It says, "Dear son, I know I've always been hard on you, but my goal was always to prepare you for this day, to help you go from a boy to a man. Sadly, there is nothing like the passing of a father to aid in this rite of passage for his son. Ultimately, I do feel I did my job and you're prepared for the next chapter of your life. Therefore, I'm bequeathing to you the majority share of Bass Industries." And obviously, there's then the whole thing with Jack. This is when we meet Jack for the first time, and Jack wants it, and, you know, Chuck just doesn't really know what to do with it, and that whole storyline continues. And we don't hear about Bart for a good while after this. Then in season 3, he has a brief appearance on the 1-year anniversary of his death, and Chuck kind of starts hallucinating and like seeing him, kind of berating him, you know, and taunting him. And in this episode, we get a flashback to the day that he died, giving us kind of more of an insight into it, that Chuck couldn't be in the room or something like that. And we actually see and pronounce him dead. Then again, season 3 goes on. We don't hear about Bart again. Season 4 goes on. Nothing to do with Bart. Then we cut to season 5, Raiders of the Lost Art. And in this episode, Chuck, Blair, Nate, Lola and Serena are all trying to figure out Diana's secret, right? And they end up at this gentleman's club that she runs, and it's in this huge kind of, I don't know what they call it in America, like I feel like over here we call it like a kind of stately home kind of vibe, you know, it's like this big massive house. And while Blair is searching around, she goes in to this room and she is absolutely shocked by what she sees. She looks like she's seen a ghost. And she comes out and she tells Chuck to go back into the house when everyone has left. And he goes back in and he finds Bart. Insane TV. I can't even tell you. When I saw this for the first time, It was insane. It was absolute insanity. I know a lot of people don't like this storyline, but just for the jaw-dropping moment of him being alive after all this time, it was insane. It was so good. And then when I watched it with my boyfriend, I was literally sat there like watching, like out the like waiting for him to see that he was still alive, because the reveal is just so good. I did not expect it at all when I watched it for the first time, so I was just like, this is fabulous. And even still now, when I watch that scene, I get all like, oh my god, it's happening, even though I've seen it like a million times. So obviously this is when we realise that back in the car crash, Bart faked his death. And he says that the reason he faked his death was because a rival business partner was threatening Chuck and Lily's life. And so he thought if he faked his death and he went away, then they would be safe.
So the car accident was real.
I was lucky to survive it. But it wasn't an accident. I'd been threatened.
And Chuck is like, well, you know, now you can stay, now that I know you're alive. And Bart says that he can't. That man is kind of still out there and is still after him. So this puts Chuck on a mission to fix it so that Bart can come back. And Diana's part in this, because it all gets a bit confusing, I'm going to do a video on like who Chuck's mother is and explaining that whole storyline. So she does come into that, but that's not really a part of this. Obviously, she does say that she is his mother, but that's not the big secret that she was hiding. The big secret that she was hiding was that Bart was alive. And now we don't really get a proper explanation as to why she does this, as to why Bart even knows her. But the gentleman's club that they show up to, where obviously Bart is staying and the one that Diana runs, is the same gentleman's club that we see in season 2, because Chuck accidentally gets an invitation that was meant for Bart, and he goes to this gentleman's club. That's where he meets Elle, and that whole storyline ensues, right? So it's the same club. So we can assume that because Diana is running it now, she was running it before. And that would give Bart kind of leverage over her, I suppose. So that could be why she was willing to help him fake his death and protect him, so that he then wouldn't expose the fact that she ran a gentleman's club, I guess. So knowing that obviously Diana was a part of this, Chuck goes to her and asks her for help and who is this man and what can we do about it? And she says that she will give him the name of, you know, the man that Bart is so afraid of, if he helps her basically get out of New York with her reputation intact. And he agrees to this. So he gives her a position at a magazine in London. I think it's like editor or editor-in-chief or something like that. And he's like, look, you can just go, take this job, leave New York. I will never tell a soul about this whole gentleman's club business. And she says, fabulous. And she reveals that the man that's after Bart is called Mason Nevins. So then he and Blair devise a plan to basically get blackmail on Mason. So Diana says that she sends 2 of her girls from the gentleman's club to Mason Nevins' like hotel room or something, like every time that he's in New York, or it's something like that, I can't remember. And he has a meeting that Friday. So she says, look, I'll send my girls in, you can go in, you can get your blackmail, and then we'll be good to go. But Nate and Lola actually end up butchering this plan because they think that Diana's just getting away with it, and they tip off the press. So Diana pulls her girls out. So Blair's like, it's fine, we're still going to do the plan, we're just going to send Lola and Ivy in as the girls instead. And they send them in, and before Mason Nevins actually comes in, Andrew Tyler, the PI, runs in and he says that, you know, Chuck needs them. It's too like dangerous. They need to come and they need to leave. And obviously they do, because they trust this guy. He's part of Bass Industries. Him and Chuck have worked together for a long time. We see Andrew quite a few times in the show. And it's actually revealed that this was a lie and that Andrew Tyler was a huge part of this whole scheme.
And to prove my loyalty, I'd help get you out of the way. I told them where you'd be, in the car. And they told me when to get out.
So Mason Nevins was a rival of Bart's, that is true. And what he had done was he had poached Andrew Tyler to come and work for him and had threatened his family. And to prove his loyalty, he ended up doing the car crash with Bart. So technically, Mason kind of is behind it, but really the real, like, the one that pulled the trigger was Andrew Tyler. And then Bart had obviously survived, but he knew that someone was after him and someone was trying to kill him. So that was when he decided to fake his death. And he had paid the doctors in the hospital to basically flatline him. He was like, turn off the machine, pronounce me dead, and I'll give you however much money to do that. And that is what they did. So that is how Bart was pronounced dead. And, everyone believed that he had died because in the records and all that stuff, he had. So after this, both Mason and Andrew are arrested, and Bart is able to return to the Upper East Side and announce that he is alive. But there's actually more to this. So he claims that obviously this whole thing with Mason Nevins is the reason why he faked his death. And that is only partially true, because we have another big reason that Bart wanted to kind of fake his death and start fresh and go into hiding. So let's get into that. So after returning to the Upper East Side, now that Bart isn't actually dead, it means that Lily is married to both Bart and Rufus, which you can't be married to two people at once. So one of the marriages has to be annulled. And very much to my annoyance and disdain, Lily picks Bart to stay with. So she annuls her marriage with Rufus and stays married to Bart. And Chuck is also excited to welcome Bart back. He's like, my dad is back after all this time and we can work together, side by side. But Bart blindsides him and takes the company back from him and basically kicks Chuck out, and he is the only Bass in Bass Industries now. And now it's kind of unclear if this was his plan the whole time, but the kind of justification that he gives for it is that he believes that Chuck is still too weak to run Bass Industries. And what he had done was he had gone to Chuck because things were on the ropes with Blair and Dan, and this diary page had come out saying, I wonder if I will ever love Dan as much as I love Chuck. And Bart goes to Harry Winston because, as we know, Chuck had returned the ring that he had made for Blair. And he goes to Harry Winston and he buys the ring back. And then Bart gives it to Chuck and says, you should do a grand gesture and win her back. And now Chuck sees this as like, oh, finally, my dad is trying to support me. But actually it was a test to see if he took the ring. And the second that he took the ring, Bart in his eyes saw that he was always going to put Blair first, and therefore he was not capable of running Bass Industries. And so he kicks him out and takes it for himself.
There has nothing to do with the way I've handled this business.
You didn't just 3 months ago almost bankrupt yourself trying to get her out of her marriage.
So this happens in the season finale, The Return of the Ring, the season finale of season 5. And Chuck then decides to go to No, it's not Vegas. I think it's like Venice or something. I can't remember where he is, but he's, gambling and stuff. And him and Jack are working out a way that they can get Bass Industries back. And Blair goes and says that she is with Chuck no matter what. And that is how we finish season 5. So season 6 then has a very big focus on Chuck's war against Bart. Now, it's only 10 episodes as opposed to the usual 22 to 25 episode season. So it is all quite jam-packed, but we do see a lot of this feud. So initially he is investigating Bart's business in Dubai and kind of what was going on there with a lady called Amira. And he invites her to New York so that he can get a bit of intel on what this trip was about. Because he thinks, Bart faked his death because of this Mason Nevins guy, but is there more to the story? Is there something else? And he wanted to look into the kind of final business deals that Bart was doing before he faked his death. And so Amira comes, and while she doesn't really remember a lot about the actual business that Bart was doing, just seeing her is enough to rock Bart. Like, he is like, what the hell is she doing here? And so he actually goes to Amira and pays her $10 million. Okay? The amount of money these people have is insane. $10 million to basically keep her mouth shut. And she is like, I don't know what he wants me to keep quiet, but it has got to be something huge. And Chuck is like, yeah, he would not pay $10 million for just some regular business deal that went south, right? So Amira then leads him to Bart's bodyguard for that trip. And Chuck offers him his own boxing club in exchange for information. Like, these people just throw money around. And he says he doesn't know much, but he knows that Bart was there meeting someone called Lady Alexander. And Chuck is like, who is this woman? And him and Blair go looking, and they're like, I have no idea who this lady is, but there's a painting called Portrait of Lady Alexander. So if they go to this artist and they find this painting, then they'll know at least what she looks like, right? So they go and they ask to see the painting, and he reveals that Lady Alexander is a horse. It's not a woman. So then they go to this horse show to find out what the hell is going on. And they find out that Lady Alexander is a horse that Bart had bought from, I think it's Shikasan, I think that's how you say it. And he had bought it from him for just under $1 million. Amongst a few other horses at that time, and they're kind of confused. They're like, what would Bart want with horses? It just doesn't make any sense. So they managed to track down the Sheik's daughter, Iman, and she insists that Bart just bought their horses kind of as a kind act and then had sent them to like a horse sanctuary because they were older. Lady Alexander was actually Iman's horse, and she calls him like Uncle Bart and everything, and she says, he just had adopted them from us to then give them kind of a last, a good end of days kind of thing. That's what she believes happened. And they're like, there is no way that Bart was running a horse sanctuary in Virginia. There's just no way. That man is too heartless for anything like that. And they say this to her, and initially she is reluctant to believe them, but later she comes to see Chuck and she admits that she looked into it, and there is no record of her horses going to any farm, and he, apologizes that they had that kind of fate. So Chuck is like, this money must have been for something else. There is no way that Bart was just buying old horses to just then get rid of them. Like, this must be some kind of cover-up. And he asks if, the Sheik had a hotel or anything that he was looking to buy, or like real estate, because obviously that is where Bass Industries, that's their bread and butter. And she says Bart can't have been in business with her dad. There's just no way, because her dad was in the oil business and Bart cannot have been involved in that. And Chuck is like, I don't really do international relations. Why? What's the deal here? And she explains that while they have a house in Dubai, they're actually Sudanese nationals, and there is an embargo on the US trading oil with Sudan. So if he had done this and been involved, traded oil and whatever, that would be breaking federal law and he would go to federal prison.
US has an embargo against trading oil with Sudan, so if that's what he bought from my father.
Bart was breaking federal law.
And so Chuck is like, this is it. This is the smoking gun. And he rings Blair and says the reason that he faked his death was because he did not want to go to federal prison. It wasn't to protect me. It wasn't to protect Lily. It was to protect himself, because of course it was. That's Bart Bass's whole shtick. So they decide they obviously need proof before they can go to anyone with this, right? And Bart actually ends up admitting to Lily that this is what he did. He said that he did it because Bass Industries was in trouble, and she asks if anyone was hurt, and he says no. And she's like, that's fine. She's literally okay with it. She's like, as long as no one was hurt, if you're doing something illegal, like, who cares? It's no biggie, babes. And he shows her an envelope with the evidence of the oil trades in it. It has this symbol on it, and it's kind of like, this is a big deal. This is where the evidence is hidden, okay? And in a later episode, Lily tries to outdo Rufus and Ivy by selling her Rainbow Lady painting. And she doesn't realize that Bart has actually hidden the evidence in this painting. So it goes up for charity auction, and Chuck realizes he's trying to bid on the painting. Lily's also trying to bid on the painting, and Ivy actually ends up winning the painting because Rufus bids on it for her, right? So Chuck goes to her and is like, look, I just want the painting. Just give me the painting. And I'll pay double. I don't care. I want this painting. And she's like, there must be something more to this painting. So she cuts open the back of it and finds the envelope. And she decides to kind of hold it for ransom. And she says to Bart and Chuck, you can have it, okay? It's whoever comes to me first with the best plan to ruin Lily's life, they get the evidence. So Bart, of course, ends up taking her up on this offer, and, you know, kind of showing that he doesn't really care about Lily. But he says that he will divorce her, he, you know, whatever, will embarrass her, he doesn't care. But ultimately, it doesn't matter because Rufus has already stolen them from Ivy and gone and given them back to Lily. So Dan sees this envelope in Lily's hand when he's leaving the apartment, and he texts Chuck to let him know that Lily has the file. Like, Ivy's not got it anymore. So Chuck comes over to Lily and tries to convince her not to help Bart and to, you know, be on his side and realize that Bart is a bad guy. And she ends up burning the evidence in the fire. So now we're at Thanksgiving dinner, and Chuck has basically given up on his fight against Bart. He's like, the evidence is gone. I'm never going to be able to pin this on him. So Nate goes to Blair and is like, look, there's still some dodgy dealings going on. Chuck doesn't want to hear it, but Bruce Kaplan, the Bass business manager, who knew about the oil trade, fell off of a Bass yacht and died. And she's like, well, that's a little bit mysterious because the Sheik, Hassan, he had also died in a car crash a little while ago. And if that car was sent by Bass Industries, we could have something here. So how mysterious is it that the two people that knew about Bart's oil trades turn up dead? So she convinces Chuck to come to the Thanksgiving dinner, and he goes upstairs and logs into the computer and finds evidence that the car that the Sheik died in was actually sent by Bass Industries. And then obviously we have the yacht provided by Bass Industries. So it's all looking a little bit dodgy. And they end up showing this to Lily, and it's kind of the final thing that convinces her that Bart is a bad guy. So she lies to him and she says that she's going to a spa weekend, and then she calls Chuck and says she believes him and she needs to get away from him and that Chuck needs to be careful. And she says that before she had burnt the evidence of the oil trades, she had read them all, and she gives Chuck everything that she can remember and kind of says, you know, have at him. So as we're getting in the lead up now to the final episodes, we have the penultimate episode, which is called The Revengers. And in this, Chuck is going to kind of expose Bart. He has what he needs now. But Bart then threatens Blair's life and says, you know, I could get her at any time. So you might want to be careful what you're spreading around here. And so he says, I will keep Blair safe as long as you fuck off, basically. He's like, I want you to go to Russia. He says, get on this plane, go to Russia, never come back, and I will promise you that Blair will stay safe. And Chuck does this. He gets on the plane, he says goodbye to Blair, and he's off. So Blair is like, I'm not going down without a fight. And she recruits Georgina, Ivy, Serena, and Sage to basically be her Avengers, and they are going to take down Bart themselves. She gives them all jobs to do, and they go to this party where Bart is being honoured for Man of the Year. And it's actually going pretty well. They're kind of shaking him. They're, you know, making him think that they have the evidence still, and it's all going pretty well. Until Blair sees on the news that the Bass plane had actually crashed, and they didn't think that there were any survivors. So she thinks that obviously Chuck has died. And Chuck had said, you know, he won't kill his own son. And then the plane crashes. So we know that that is not true, and that he is truly just the most ruthless character on this show and would kill his own son. So for a moment, we think that Chuck has died. And Dan comes up onto the stage, and we think he's about to, well, Bart as well. Everyone thinks he's about to introduce Bart as Man of the Year. But he actually ends up introducing Chuck onto the stage, and we see that Chuck is still alive. So Chuck then announces when he's on stage that Bart just tried to have his own son killed, and Bart obviously gets security to remove him. Bart then goes up to the roof with Chuck and, you know, breaks his phone and starts having a go at him. And it's just the two of them up there, and he is confronting him and taunting him and saying that nobody is ever going to believe Chuck over, like, the Man of the Year, the man that has all the police in his pocket. There's nothing that Chuck can do. Also, this is such a side note, but the music they play in this scene is absolutely hilarious. It's just so different to anything else in the show. It's so bizarre. Like, it's like they're trying to recreate, like, Darth Vader and Luke fighting. The music is so weird and dramatic, and, like, this whole scene is so over dramatized, but honestly I think it's hilarious. So Chuck ends up punching Bart, and then when Bart goes to punch him back, he like lunges at him and goes over the railing, right? Because remember, they're on the roof of this tall building. He goes over the railing and he is holding on, and Blair comes up to the roof just in time and she witnesses this whole thing. And so it's her and Chuck stood there, and Bart is clinging on to the side of the building. So Bart asks Chuck to help him up, insisting, you know, that he's all talk and he would never actually hurt him. But Chuck says that everything Bart says is a lie, and then he and Blair watch as Bart loses his grip and falls to his second death and his permanent death. Okay, this is it now. He's done. And then Chuck and Blair flee the scene. So down on the floor we see the police, and they're covering Bart's body with a sheet, and Georgina is there and Ivy's there. Everyone's kind of trying to find out more information, and the news initially says that they aren't going to release who it is until the family have been notified, and we see Lily finding out, and then it is everywhere, all over the news, that Bart has died. And the police come and they question Nate, they question Eleanor and Cyrus about where Chuck and Blair are, if Chuck could have been involved, and everyone's kind of just not saying anything. So Chuck is officially announced a person of interest on the news. That is not a suspect. They like clarify that. They're like, he's not a suspect. They just think he might have information on Bart's death, so they want to talk to him. So he and Blair are hiding out in this hotel until Jack comes, and he has this plan. He says, look, if you and Blair get married, she's the only witness to this, and then they cannot make her testify against you in court. And Blair thinks it's a great idea. Chuck is initially like, you know, this isn't how I wanted us to get married. I wanted you to have, you know, something nicer than this. But they do end up getting married. They get married with everyone there and present, and Jack also backdates the marriage license so that it doesn't look like they got married after Bart's death. And just as they've finished getting married, the police come and arrest them, and Cyrus goes and he is their lawyer, but, you know, after refusing to answer any questions, there's no evidence that Chuck was on the roof, no evidence that Blair was on the roof. The only person that saw him was Blair, and she's not going to say anything. They don't have any evidence, so they declare Bart's death an accident, and Chuck and Blair go free.
No choice but to let us go, or it's death. If your role was an accident.
So that is it. That is the two deaths of Bart Bass explained. And I just think this storyline was so ridiculous, but also I kind of live for it. It's just insane. And Bart, I think, was a really, really good villain. I think he definitely has some of the best scenes, and he was just pure evil. It's rare you get someone that's just pure evil on these shows, but he was, and he played it well. So that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I really like doing these videos where I like dive into specific plot points. So if there's any others from like Gossip Girl, Pretty Little Liars, you know, 90210, whatever, Desperate Housewives that you want to see me talk about, then let me know down below. And yeah, did you like that Bart came back? Would you rather if he had stayed dead? When my boyfriend and I watched it and Bart died the first time, he actually said, oh, I bet he's not dead. And I was like, I didn't say anything because I didn't want to give it away, but I was like, I can't believe you just guessed this plot for like 3 seasons from now. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.